What's up everyone, Mitesh here, and we gotta talk about this Huawei situation. I wanted to wait to make this video, but since things were still changing day to day, but after today's reporting that ARM has stopped working with Huawei, I knew no other development would really gonna top this. So in this video, I'm going to try to explain what's happening with Huawei and the US government and why Huawei is going to be screwed if things don't change soon. So for those of you who haven't kept up with the news, let me just quickly recap what's happened so far. If you're not aware, US and China have been at an escalating trade war for a while now, and along with that trade war, US intelligence has been telling its allies not to use Huawei telecom equipment for their rollout of 5G. Due to Huawei potentially putting a backdoor in their hardware and Huawei having very close ties to the Chinese government. Now, if that's actually true or not, it still seems to be up for debate. The UK government might be moving forward with using Huawei equipment despite the warnings after doing their own assessment of the hardware. But anyways, this is the claim that US intelligence and US government are making. And just last week, the US Commerce Department decided to put Huawei on this thing called the Entity List. The Entity List is a list of entities that US companies are not allowed to work with without the express consent of the Commerce Department. So after this happened, we got word that Google was revoking Huawei's Android license to comply with this order, and Huawei would no longer be able to ship any Android phones with Google apps or services like the Play Store. Now, this wasn't the end of the world. It is a big deal in that the Play Store is kind of important in Western markets like Europe and Canada and Australia, though that's an Eastern country, I suppose. But they did have possibilities of using another app store like the App Gallery that they were already building out, or they were also in talks with Aptoid, which is an alternative app store for Android. But even with that, not having official Google apps like Maps or YouTube would kind of be a deal breaker for a lot of people anyways. But luckily, that wasn't the end of the story. A day after the news broke that Google was breaking off ties with Huawei, they got a reprieve, albeit a temporary one, from the US Commerce Department, which gave Google a license to continue providing support to already existing Android phones for at least 3 months. So if you have a Huawei phone, you can continue using it knowing it's going to get updates and security updates at least, and nothing is going to stop working on them. Like Google Apps will still work, YouTube will continue working, but beyond those 3 months, there's not really a definitive thing. I think the apps will continue working and you'll continue to have the Play Store, but you're not going to get any more updates after that. Now, as bad as all of that news is, that was just the first little part of it. There were still people saying it wasn't the end for Huawei and the smartphone business because they can make their own OS and replace Android in their phones, which they've already been working on their own OS because they knew something like this announcement was going to come. But then we got today's announcement that ARM is cutting off cooperation with Huawei and HiSilicon, Huawei's CPU company. And that is a huge deal. For those of you who don't know, ARM is a company that creates execution instructions for mobile CPUs. If that sounds a little complicated, it is, but what you need to know is that without licensing agreement with ARM, you can't make a mobile processor. So Huawei, or more importantly HiSilicon, can no longer produce their Kirin chipsets for their smartphones or even some processors for their servers, which are actually also based off ARM. So once they run out of stockpiles of whatever mobile CPUs they have right now, that's it. They're done making smartphones. There isn't a good alternative to ARM's instruction set, at least not yet, and developing something like that would take years. So what I'm saying is Huawei is screwed if the US government doesn't remove them from the Entity List. Not only are they going to lose on software and hardware from US companies, but there may be no alternatives for them for some major components like the CPU. Their best hope is that China and US resolve their trade differences, and that can be used as leverage to get them off of that list. But if that takes too long, the company is really going to suffer because, let's face it, even if the pace of smartphone development is slowing down, it's not stopping. Being a few months behind in design and software is tough to recover from, if not impossible. So yeah, that is what's up with Huawei. Not really sure how this is going to get resolved, especially with the way the trade talks are right now, but it's not looking good for them. But anyways, let me know what you guys think about all this down in the comments below. I know if you're in the US, this probably is not a big deal to you since you've never gotten to use Huawei phones, but I know those of you that are in Canada and EU and Australia and India like Huawei phones and want them to continue competing. And so do I, honestly. Even if I don't get to use them, I want them to continue competing so that Samsung will continue making their phones better, LG will continue making their phones better, because competition is good. But anyways, like this one if you liked it, subscribe if you guys loved it, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye!